Have you ever said yes to help and slowly realized that, in exchange, you gave up pieces of who you are? That's what happened to me, and I'm not telling you this out of resentment. I'm telling you because sometimes losing yourself doesn't happen in a dramatic moment. It happens in silence, quietly, slowly, almost politely. It began with love, or at least, that's what I believed. One evening, my son sat across from me, his hands wrapped around mine, his voice soft. "Mom, you shouldn't be living alone anymore. Sell the house. Come stay with us. You'll be safe. You'll be cared for." And I trusted him, because he's my boy, the child I once carried, the one whose scraped knees I kissed, whose dreams I protected. If he said it was time, who was I to question? So, I said yes. I sold the house that had held more than furniture. It held the story of my life. The hallway that echoed my children's laughter. The garden that heard my prayers and kept my secrets. The kitchen that fed our memories, joyful, messy, unforgettable. I let it go, trading it for the promise of peace, of togetherness, of being wanted. But what no one tells you is that sometimes help comes with conditions no one speaks aloud. At first, everything looked right. They smiled. I smiled. I was introduced to friends and neighbors with warmth. "This is my mom. She's staying with us now." And I nodded, grateful. But day by day, things changed. Nothing cruel, nothing obvious, just small shifts. A dish left in the sink too long, a comment about how I arrange things. My blanket, the one I always had with me, folded away because it didn't match their couch. I began to walk softer, speak less, hold my breath around their schedule. I waited until the house was asleep just to boil water for tea. And somewhere, in all of that, something inside me began to dim. It wasn't that they didn't care. I know they do, but I stopped feeling like a mother, and started feeling like a guest. Like someone who needed permission to exist quietly in the background of their lives. Have you ever felt that way? Surrounded by family, but lonely in your soul. Still called mom, but no longer seen as the woman you are. Just the role you now fill. What no one says out loud is that aging doesn't make you less of a person, and needing care doesn't mean surrendering your voice. But there's this invisible line, this unspoken assumption that the older you get, the smaller your world should become, that your comfort doesn't matter as much, that safety is enough, even if it costs you your identity. And that's where I found myself, not unloved, but unseen, not mistreated, but misunderstood, not broken, but quietly erased. If any part of this touches something in you, if you've lived this, or seen it in someone's eyes, I want to say this: you are not alone. And you're not wrong for feeling what you feel. This story is not just mine. It's happening in more homes than we dare admit. Behind closed doors, beneath polite smiles, there are voices growing quieter, not because they have nothing to say, but because no one's truly listening. So stay here with me, because what I'm going to share next might open your eyes to something we've all overlooked. It might bring back memories, or it might shift how you see someone close to you. Either way, it's a truth that needs to be told, not with blame, but with honesty. Now, I want to go even deeper into this. And as I sit here sharing this with you, part of me still hesitates, not out of shame, but out of that same habit I picked up in my son's house, not wanting to take up too much space. But stories like this, feelings like these, they don't belong in silence. They need air, they need light, and maybe, just maybe, they need to be heard by someone who understands, someone like you. So if any of this resonates with your heart, if you've ever felt pushed aside in your own story, or seen someone you love become smaller, just to keep the peace, I want to ask you to do something simple. Leave a comment. Tell me what part of this spoke to you. Tell me your story. Or just write a word, a sentence, anything that reminds us all that we're not invisible. Your voice here matters not just to me, but to everyone who stops to read and realizes they're not alone. And if this kind of story means something to you, if you believe these truths deserve to be spoken aloud, go ahead and like this video. That small gesture helps carry this message further, so it reaches the next person sitting in quiet pain, waiting for a sign that they're seen. And if you're someone who wants to keep hearing voices like mine, real voices, from real lives, spoken with heart and honesty, then I invite you to subscribe to this channel, because the more we show up for each other here, the more space we create for stories that matter. Let's not let this conversation end in silence. Let's keep it going. It started with the kind of promise that warms your heart. My son, with the most caring tone, looked me in the eyes and said, "You won't have to worry about anything anymore. You'll have your space. We'll be together. No more loneliness." And in that moment, I believed him with all my heart. Not because I was naive, but because I wanted to believe that this next chapter of my life could finally be softer. A chapter written with love, closeness, and dignity. He said it was about family, about doing the right thing. And who wouldn't want to feel cared for after years of being the one who carried the weight? The first weeks felt like a gentle landing after a long journey. There were shared meals, laughs at the dinner table, my grandkids coming in and out of my room with drawings and hugs. My son would check in on me, ask how I was sleeping, if I needed anything. It felt like everything was settling into place, like maybe this really was a new kind of home. But slowly, the tone changed. Not overnight. That's the thing about change. It creeps in, disguised in small details. A missed invitation to a family outing. A closed door I once felt welcome to knock on. A conversation whispered just low enough that I couldn't quite hear, followed by an awkward silence when I entered the room. My opinion was asked less. My presence noticed more. Not in a warm way, but in a calculating one. I began to sense I was becoming something to be managed, not included. They said things like, "Mom, you don't need to worry about that," or "Let us handle it, it's easier this way." Harmless, maybe, if said once, but repetition turns reassurance into exclusion. Soon, I found myself second-guessing everything. From where I left my shoes to whether I should join them in the living room at all. The space they had once described as mine began to feel like borrowed time, and even that came with conditions. I want to be clear, I know my son meant well. I don't think he ever sat down and decided to take away my voice or my freedom. But love, without awareness, can still cause deep harm. That's something many people don't realize. It's not always about cruelty. Sometimes it's about unconscious control. About decisions made for you instead of with you. And slowly, your sense of self begins to unravel. There's a kind of pain that's hard to explain. It doesn't scream, it whispers. It shows up in the way you stop correcting people when they assume things about your needs. It's in the way you fold your sweater smaller in the drawer, just to take up less space. It's in the hesitation before you suggest a recipe at dinner, afraid they'll find it too old-fashioned. And worst of all, it's in the quiet goodbye you say to pieces of yourself, not because you want to let them go, but because you're trying to survive where you no longer feel seen. Now, I want to go even deeper into this. Comment here. That promise changed everything. I started noticing it in the little things no one would think twice about unless they once had a home of their own. A vase I had cherished for years was packed away and labeled not needed. My old clock, the one that had chimed through every chapter of my life, was tucked in a closet because it didn't match the aesthetic. I wasn't asked, it was just done. As if the life I had built, the objects that had carried my stories, didn't have a place anymore. Not in this house. Not in this version of home. I wasn't allowed to make small changes, even in my own room. I tried once to hang a family photo near my bed, and my daughter-in-law gently suggested, "Let's keep the walls clean." Okay, I nodded. Of course, it's their house, after all. That's what I kept reminding myself. Even though I was told this was our new chapter, the truth is, I never had a page of my own in it. I missed the simple rituals of my day, waking up when I wanted to, sitting quietly by the window with my coffee, playing my old music while I cooked. Now, my mornings are silent. I wait to hear footsteps before leaving my room. I whisper when I talk on the phone. And I always knock, even on doors that once would have been wide open to me without hesitation. I no longer make meals. I'm not asked what I'd like for dinner. My input, my preferences, even my dislikes, are things I keep to myself. It's easier that way. Less trouble, less awkwardness. And that word, less, it began to echo in everything. I started becoming less visible, less heard, less like myself. I'm not ungrateful. I'm safe. I have a roof. But there's a kind of safety that comes at the cost of identity. And when you give up your own space, your own routines, your little comforts that no one else even notices, you begin to feel like a ghost in someone else's world. It's hard to explain this kind of grief to anyone who hasn't lived it. It's not about dramatic moments. It's about the quiet erasure of your place in the world. About having to ask, "Can I sit here?" Or is it okay if I watch this? In a house where your name is known but your presence feels conditional, you begin to walk softer, speak less, avoid drawing attention to yourself. Not because you're ashamed, but because you've learned that your comfort might inconvenience someone else. And somewhere along the way, without meaning to, you begin to shrink. Not in body, but in spirit. And that's when you realize, you're not just living in someone else's home, you've given up your own, the home you once led, with your voice and your rhythm and your rules, no longer exists. And this new one, though filled with people you love, makes you feel like a guest in your own life. Now I want to go even deeper into this. Write in the comments, I still need my space. I remember one afternoon they had all gone out to run errands, and for the first time in days, I let myself walk barefoot through the kitchen. Just feeling the cool tiles under my feet brought back something I hadn't realized I'd missed. Freedom, not the grand kind, like traveling the world or making big decisions. I'm talking about the simple kind, the freedom to exist comfortably, the kind you don't even notice when you have it until it's gone. I had a small collection of teacups, each one with a story, one from my honeymoon, one I bought after my first paycheck, one from a trip I took with my sister before she passed. They didn't match, not in style or color, but they were mine. And when I moved in, I placed them neatly in the corner cabinet. A few days later, I found them packed away in a box in the garage. We're going with a more minimal look, she said, smiling gently. I hope you don't mind. I said I didn't, but I did. It wasn't about the cups. It was about erasing the quiet corners of my story, the ones no one else thought mattered. I didn't protest. I didn't argue. I didn't want to seem difficult or ungrateful. That became my silent rule. Don't take up space. Be easy. Be invisible, if you must. So, I started doing things like waiting until everyone had gone to bed before I made myself a cup of tea. I didn't want to disturb anyone's evening or cluttered the silence. I kept my books in boxes under the bed because the shelf was already full. I turned off my music, the music that once filled my mornings, because it didn't fit the vibe of the house. It's strange how heavy silence can feel. How trying not to inconvenience someone becomes a full-time effort. I used to think love meant presence, connection, conversation. But in this version of my life, love started to look like quiet compliance, like stepping around people, like shrinking my needs so they didn't ripple through anyone else's comfort. I wasn't forbidden from doing things. No one said, don't walk here or don't touch that. It was more subtle than that. The looks, the pauses, the way someone would gently refold the towel I'd hung, the way they'd reset the table after I'd already set it. These small corrections spoke volumes, not in what they said but in what they suggested. This isn't really your space. And so I learned to exist in the margins, to anticipate moods, to stay useful, but not demanding, present, but not disruptive. It's a form of emotional choreography, always adjusting your movements so you don't step on anyone's toes. It's exhausting, but you do it, because you don't want to cause tension, because the last thing you want is to become too much. I began to tell myself that it was okay, that I was lucky, that many people had it worse, but deep inside, something quiet and steady kept whispering, you used to be more than this. Now I want to go even deeper into this. Write in the comments, I just didn't want to be a burden. Now I want to go even deeper into this. There's a line so thin, so delicate between caring and controlling. At first, it felt like love. She brought me tea in the mornings, reminded me to take my pills, even set out my slippers by the bed. It was sweet, thoughtful. It made me feel safe. But, little by little, that care began to wrap around me like invisible ropes. Soft, warm ropes, but still ropes. She would say things like, you don't need to worry about that anymore, Mom. Or, let me handle this, it's easier if I just take care of it. I understand the intention, I truly do. But something inside me started to shrink, like my voice didn't matter as much, like my choices were slowly being replaced by decisions made in my name. The truth is, she didn't mean harm. She thought she was protecting me. But in that protection, I lost the little freedoms that made me feel like me. She picked my meals, arranged my doctor's appointments, even changed my shampoo. This one's better for your age, she said once, smiling. I laughed along, but inside, something ached. It's called emotional infantilization. A quiet, well-meaning transformation where an aging parent is no longer seen as an adult with opinions and history, but as someone to be managed. It's subtle. No one talks about it, but if you've ever had to ask permission to do something in your own life, like you were suddenly a child again, then you know what I'm talking about. She decided when the lights went off in the house, when dinner would be served, what we'd watch on TV. Mom, it's better for you if you go to bed earlier. And I nodded, not because I was tired, but because saying no felt wrong. I started sleeping when she told me to, eating what she told me to, living the life she thought was best for me. And that's the part that hurt the most. Not the actions themselves, but the slow erosion of my own judgment, my preferences, my agency. And it wasn't just her. Friends who came by would talk around me, not to me. Nurses would ask her questions about my health as if I weren't in the room. I became a shadow in the story of my own life, watched over like someone fragile, but never truly seen. It's a strange kind of prison, the one built from good intentions. The walls are soft, the door is open, but somehow, you still can't leave. You stop asking, you stop offering, you become passive in your own existence. Because every time you try to take back a piece of control, someone gently pushes your hand away. Let me, Mom, it's easier this way. But easier for who? I began to wonder, was this really about care, or was it about comfort? Theirs, not mine. The truth is, sometimes people give what they think you need, not what you truly crave, and what I craved, was dignity, respect, the feeling of still being useful, capable, involved even with gray hair and slower steps. What people don't see is that control can wear the mask of compassion. And when that happens, we don't just lose our independence. We lose pieces of our identity, too. Write in the comments, I still want to decide for myself. Now, I want to go even deeper into this. There's something we don't talk about enough. The hidden emotions behind these family arrangements. The quiet fears. The guilt we carry. The stories we tell ourselves so we don't break apart. You see, I don't believe my son set out to hurt me. I truly don't. I think he thought he was doing what was right, what was responsible, what a good son should do. But sometimes, good intentions grow from fear, not love. Fear of seeing your parent grow old. Fear of being judged for not doing enough. Fear of inconvenience, of time slipping away, of not knowing what else to do. And so decisions are made quickly, efficiently, without real conversations. It's for your own good, they say. And you nod. Because arguing with someone who says they love you feels wrong, even when your heart is quietly breaking. And me, I started to carry my own kind of fear. Fear of sounding ungrateful. Fear of speaking up and making things worse. Fear that if I asked for too much, I'd lose the little I still had. So, I said thank you. Over and over again. Even when I felt suffocated. Even when the silence around me screamed louder than any words. It's hard to explain what that silence feels like. It's not just about not being heard. It's about not feeling like you even deserve to be heard. I would catch myself apologizing for the smallest things. For being in the kitchen. For asking where my slippers went. For existing at the wrong time of day. And every time I swallowed my feelings, I told myself, it's okay. Don't make a fuss. They're doing their best. But deep down, I was shrinking. I was becoming smaller to make everyone else more comfortable. That's the truth we rarely say out loud. That sometimes love wears a mask, and we all pretend it fits. That sometimes the ones we love the most are also the ones we fear disappointing. And instead of building bridges of understanding, we pile up bricks of silence and walk on tiptoe around each other's needs. And if I'm honest, I think my son feels it too. The tension, the way I smile a little too quickly, the way I say, I'm fine, even when my eyes say otherwise. But we don't talk about it, because he's afraid of being the bad guy. And I'm afraid of being the burden. So we live in this quiet performance, hoping no one forgets their lines. But love shouldn't feel like a performance. And family shouldn't be about who sacrifices more. It should be about truth. About looking each other in the eye and saying, I'm scared too, but let's figure this out together. Maybe you've felt this in your own home. Maybe you've seen it in someone else's eyes. That mixture of gratitude and sadness. That aching in the chest that whispers, I'm thankful, but I miss myself. Write in the comments, I still remember who I am. Now I want to go even deeper into this. There comes a moment when the silence gets too loud, not just around you, but inside you. A moment when you realize you can't keep folding yourself into smaller and smaller spaces just to keep the peace. That moment came to me quietly, like so many things do when you're older. Not with anger or a dramatic confrontation, but with a whisper in my heart that said, "You still matter." And that whisper, it changed something. Because I started to ask myself, how do I get back to me without breaking everything around me? How do I speak up without hurting the people I love? I didn't want a fight. I didn't want pity. I just wanted space to breathe, to exist, to be seen not as someone who used to be, but as someone who still is. I began by asking gentle questions. Could we talk? Do you have a moment later? I tried to speak not with blame, but with truth. I said things like, I'm grateful to be here, but I miss feeling like this is also my home. I told my son, when you make all the decisions for me, I feel erased. I didn't cry. I didn't accuse. I just shared, slowly, carefully, honestly, and something happened. He listened, not perfectly, not all at once. There was defensiveness at first. That automatic tightening we all feel when we think we're being criticized. But because I didn't come with anger, he didn't meet me with it either. And in that space, that fragile, quiet space, we started to rebuild something real. Setting boundaries didn't mean shutting him out. It meant inviting him into the truth of what I was living. I asked to decorate a corner of the house with things that made me feel like me again. I asked for time alone in the kitchen, just to cook the way I used to. I asked to be consulted on decisions that affected me, not to control, but to feel considered. It wasn't about control. It was about dignity. It was about saying, I'm still a woman. I'm still a person. I still have preferences, rhythms, dreams. That's the part that gets lost when care turns into control. We forget that love doesn't have to mean protection at the cost of freedom, that we can honor our parents not just by sheltering them, but by listening to them. And I get it. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's easier to decide for someone than to listen to them, especially when that someone is aging, slowing down, becoming more vulnerable. But the truth is, vulnerability doesn't erase value. If anything, it should deepen our respect, not limit it. So if you're someone living this, either as the parent or the child, I just want to say, it's not too late. There's always room for a new kind of conversation. One built not on guilt or duty, but on mutual respect. One where both voices are heard, not just the louder or younger one. And maybe, just maybe, that's where real healing starts. Write in the comments, I still deserve to be heard. One of the hardest truths I had to face was that reclaiming my voice didn't mean everything would magically go back to how it once was. There's no going back, not to the house I sold, not to the life I left behind. But that doesn't mean I can't build something new, even within these unfamiliar walls. It took time, and honesty, and a kind of bravery I didn't expect I'd need at this stage in life. The bravery to speak softly but firmly, when silence had become my shield. I began to say things like, this space matters to me, or, I'd like to do it my way, if that's okay. And those tiny phrases, simple as they were, started to shift the energy in the house. It wasn't just about boundaries, it was about connection. I realized that, for years, my son had only seen me as mom, the one who gave and rarely asked for anything in return. He had forgotten, or maybe never fully known, that I am also a woman with my own needs, my own habits, my own quiet joys. So we started having real conversations. Not just logistics and dinner plans, but the kind that happen when two adults meet each other honestly. I told him how hard it was to feel like I had to ask for permission just to exist. I told him about the parts of me I had silenced. And to my surprise, he listened again. Not with solutions, not with defensiveness, just with presence. That was the moment I began to feel like myself again. It wasn't about getting my house back. It was about getting me back, my rhythm, my choices, my identity. I started putting my own mug back on the shelf. I brought my old chair into the corner by the window. I planted lavender in a small pot by the back door. Little things, maybe, but for me, they were pieces of a life that had been paused, now slowly returning. And I share this not because I have all the answers, but because I know how many others are living in this in-between space, not quite at home, not quite lost, but suspended in that quiet ache of not belonging. If you've ever felt that, if you've ever smiled to keep the peace while something inside you whispered, this isn't living, then please know, you are not alone. There is a way forward. one honest word at a time, one brave moment at a time, one conversation that begins not with blame, but with truth. Write in the comments, "I just wanted my space back." Your story might be the mirror someone else needs to feel seen, and a reminder that none of us were meant to disappear quietly. And if you're still here with me, thank you. Truly, that means this story found a place inside you, just like it lived inside me for so long before I had the courage to speak it out loud. If something in what I shared echoed with your own experience or reminded you of someone you care about, leave a comment below with the words, "This message was for me." I read each one, and it helps build this space into something real, human, and shared. And if you felt something here, even just for a moment, give this video a like. Not for numbers or reach, but because it tells me that stories like this matter, and that I should keep showing up to tell them. If you want to stay close, to keep you walking por esse caminho de verdades difíceis e corações abertos, you're more than welcome to subscribe. This channel is a home for stories that rarely get told and people who rarely feel seen. There's another video right here beside me that continues this conversation in a way I think you'll connect with. Click it and come with me. I'll be waiting for you there.